So this is the 21-25 GMT edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel being broadcast under the theme of Baby Angel Geronimo editions on the internet, not on satellite, not on terrestrial, not on cable network platforms. This is Wednesday, the 21st of September 2022. And despite the fact that Brenda's funeral and the official mourning has come to an end, the mainstream media and the mainstream establishment remain obsessed with Brenda's passing and Brenda's contributions. Most of the big companies, businesses like Tesco, are still displaying their official notices saying that they are saddened by the passing of the Brenda. The latest edition of the satirical fortnightly Private Eye, which is number 1582 and dated 2 days ahead of the actual availability, which is 21st of September. It is available on the 21st of September, but is dated the 23rd of September and is covering the fortnight up to 6th of October 2022. And I think they got the cover bubbles almost right. Whether it's visible to the camera is a different matter, but it says there's a picture of Brian, that is King Charles III, looking Brian like as he shakes hands with one of the crowds. And the bubble says, as if he's saying it, "How long did you have to wait?" And one of the voices from the crowd says, "Not as long as you." Now, that is a reference to Brian having been mentioned many times during Brenda's 70 years. Well, Brenda's late decades, as Brian having to wait for Brenda to snuff it before he could become king or the monarch. That's what this is about, and this is actually factually almost spot on. Apart from that, there is, of course, the update, which is only available from this angle in the private lie, about the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, the British-born mental slave, Quasi Quatrang. Quasi Quatrang is an arslicker in the language of Private Eye of career industrial proportion, and he has been rewarded by Lies Truss with this portfolio. Of course, the decisions about the economy, etc., are not being made by, will not be made by Quasi Quatrang. He's an arslicker, but he is the front man, and his frontage does diversity business appropriately because he is very black, but on the inside is very white and very much a nephew Tom. Now, Quasi Quatrang is typically hitting the headlines on Wednesday's newspapers, led by the financial crimes, that he's going to remove the cap on bankers' bonuses. Now, what that means is that The bankers in the UK, in the city of London, or what is referred to as City of London, but physically not necessarily situated in what used to be the City of London. Most of it is based in Canary Wharf, or the Isle of Dogs, as it used to be called, in the geographical borough of Tower Hamlets. But the Tower Hamlets, ordinary borough of Tower Hamlets, is a billion miles away from the City of London, that is Canary Wharf. Now, Quatrang has said that he's going to remove the ban on bankers looting and pocketing money, billions of pounds in their pockets. The bankers looting and robbery is something that actually was responsible for the crash, the financial crash of 2008 in London, when Gordon Brown was just in as the successor to Tony Blair as the Prime Minister. And Gordon Brown has taken credit, extraordinary credit, for crisis aversion. But that was a fraud, big fraud, and the fraud continues. City of London is a fraud, and the City of London, whether it's based in the traditional square mile in the City of London or extended into Canary Wharf, the essential role of the City of London remains big time corruption and criminality. And Kwasi Kwarteng, the arse licker, has now hit the headlines, and he is, of course, quite happy to do that because it would please the right wing, over greedy, evil part of the conservative cabal. And so this is the item on page 42 of the Private Life, the bonus question. I'm not going to go into too much details because I have said in summary, the City of London is the engine of corruption and criminality in the biggest way possible, and the UK financially is the biggest offshore location on the planet Earth. Despite the fact that the BBC and others have done the Panama paper saying that the offshore kind of accounts on Panama Island, or Panama, the little country in South America, is the bigger kind of the biggest location or site for crooks from various countries, including from Pakistan, because the Panama Papers, the phrase has been featuring in many of Imran Khan's Jalsa speeches when he refers to Nawaz Sharif and other crooks and thieves, chores. Now, the frequency with which Imran Khan has been talking about the chores in Pakistan is unprecedented. The fact and the frequency. I'm the only one who has been calling out crooks and thieves and chores, but mine has been mainly in the context of East Pakistan and now Bangladesh. In my only appearance on the slot called Reality with Mahi on the channel S in 2011, I extensively condemned the widespread industrial scale corruption, political and social corruption in Bangladesh. The topic was whether UK Bangladeshis in the UK should have involvement with party politics related to Bangladesh, and I said absolutely not. Now, that particular recording is one of the many recordings that I shall obtain and get hold of and do the transcripts on and share the contents on and update the contents on, because I'm the only one who has been saying these things. Chores, thieves, criminals, which is what I said in 1970. at a sitting lasting the whole day just before the 1970 December 1970 general election in Pakistan. I sat in a tea shop in the market Sundarpur Bazaar, my village bazaar, and I sat there for the whole day, paying for about 50 cups of tea, drunk quite greedily and happily by the participants in the so called discussion about the election that was about to happen. So I counted about just over 50 questions and 50 issues that I raised about the suitability of the particular parties. And the people who were present there were mainly young people, but interested in discussing politics and the votes and whatever. And as was the record, as was the kind of habit, they depended on me for answers and they were eager to hear my comments covering various aspects of what had happened since August 1947 and what would happen in the event of any outcome of the election. If the Awami League got the majority, what would happen? And if the Awami League didn't get the majority, what would happen? And if the Awami League didn't get the majority, why would it not get the majority? And if the Awami League did get the majority, how was it that the parties that had actually campaigned for Lord Kelenge Pakistan, that was the Urdu slogan, that we shall create Pakistan, bring Pakistan about by fighting, especially represented by the Muslim League. I explained all of these, and every answer, every statement by way of explanation that I gave could only be given by me because none of the present persons would know anything about most of the stuff that were in the discussion. And all of them agreed with me. Think about this. All of them agreed with all my comments and predictions. So when I said, so which party would you vote for? Guess what? They said Awami League. Now that was sometime December 1970. And this is now 52 years later. And I often refer to the Little England, the brainwashed Little Englanders. Now there in Sundarpur Bazaar, I had an inkling, I had a kind of preview of the version in then East Pakistan of the Little England brainwashed. There was no rationality. There was absolutely no logic. There was absolutely no relationship with the feelings and the emotions and the impact of the behavior of the voters, impact on the rest of the country, on the local community, on the wider community. By the way, everything I had said by way of kind of forecast or prediction about the consequences if the Awami League won more than came about, and my predictions are still coming about. The so called four student leaders who exaggerated their importance and impact in the bringing about of so called kind of movement for Bangladesh. I'll say so called for a reason, I'll come to that in a minute. All these four, or all those four, have become and have played the roles of being complicit with Sheikh Hasina's regime. Whatever statements they made in the years during Irshad Hussein's corrupt regime or Khaleda Zia's BNP regime, whatever they said, and they did say versions of things that were apparently critical of the Awami League as fronted by Sheikh Hasina. Whatever they said that might be termed as critical or mildly critical has been completely forgotten, overlooked. And these four ended up being silent colluders, effectively silent colluders with Sheikh Hasina. Now, ASM Abdul Rob has made certain noises that could be interpreted as being critical of Sheikh Hasina. But that is a mirage. That is a pretense. Because none of the comments that he has made actually has had any physical political impact in dislodging the Sheikh Hasina regime, let alone in holding to account any of her criminal colluders and network and her kind of associates, collaborators, to use a word that they have used against other people. The fact that Imran Khan in Pakistan is still refusing to tell the truth about East Pakistan and to tell the truth about the military violence against innocent civilians in 71 is very important and remains very important. And Imran Khan will not ever get the credibility that he might otherwise think he is entitled to. For example, during Wednesday, that is the day that has passed today, he spoke about rule of law in Lahore among lawyers in front of an audience of mainly lawyers. But Imran Khan, of course, is ignorant about the law. And constitutional law is particularly something that he cannot just assume that he knows about because he uses phrases like rule of law. Rule of law is itself not a panacea, nor is it an ethically sound, automatically ethically sound concept. Why? Because rule of law was what the Nazis were actually following under Hitler. Think about that. Because rule of law is a procedure, it's a bureaucracy. It's not an ethical, dynamic, moral process. Rule of law is not synonymous with morality and ethics. So Imran Khan has got a lot to learn about the phrase that he has been using. But of course, the audience in Lahore and in the rest of the community that are watching his jalsa and his deliberations, as they did today, Wednesday, I think they are justifiably grateful that he is bothering even to talk about rule of law and similar things. And I think that that's understandable because until Imran Khan was ousted by the crooks bureaucracy in the law, in the judiciary, he had not shown anything like the zeal and the passion and the commitment to Pakistan ka matlab kiya la ilaha illallah that he has now shown in the last 4 months or so. Well, 5 months. Is it June, July, August, September? Yes, 4 months, let's say. And the fact that he has done that is very significant because for the 75 years since August 1947, The subcontinent has been submerged in systematic denial of democracy, systematic lying by the usurping of the power, state power, by sets of crooks and criminals. I mean, the longest going one currently in India is, of course, the criminal against humanity, Narendra Modi. But Modi is not the only one. Even the Nehrus, typified by Jawaharlal Nehru, committed serious constitutional criminality against the people of the subcontinent, and especially in violating the United Nations resolutions over Kashmir. Jawaharlal Nehru caused the problem of the impasse in Kashmir. So, for the Western kind of outlets to describe India as the world's largest democracy is a multiple crime and a lie. Only a quarter of the people in India really have got effective democratic say. Three-quarters of the people may be on the various types of roles, electoral roles, but they have no effective control on the outcome. And the situation in Pakistan, of course, is made more explicit by the Jalsa speeches by Imran Khan. No speaker, well, Jayaprakash Narayan in India was a kind of exception who featured as the critic of the corrupt years of Indira Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru's daughter. But Jayaprakash Narayan didn't have the kind of following. He had the following in the kind of liberal circles. But among the masses, Jayaprakash Narayan did not materialize as the force for change in a fundamental way. So the political death currently of the Indira Gandhi Congress was inevitable, was created by Indira Gandhi and before her by her father Nehru. And there is no evidence, apart from West Bengal and Kolkata and Mamata Banerjee with her grassroots Congress, there is no evidence of any critical party in India today, that is making any significant challenges for democracy, accountability, etc. in India. So, in the subcontinent, currently at least for the last 4 months, the main democratic discourse has been being led by Imran Khan. So, he has problems in terms of getting his facts right, and of course, he's blanking East Pakistan. But the remaining Pakistan that he is addressing, he is covering in a way that nobody else has covered. The limitation there is that unless he recognizes the whole of East Pakistan and the role of East Pakistan that the speaker at the Lahore Bar Association acknowledged last week, that the East Pakistan or the Bangladesh today was the real Pakistan. Imran Khan has to get the facts right and fully package his speech with evidence, credible evidence and facts, before he can be taken seriously as leading the much overdue revolution, political revolution across the subcontinent, not just in what is Pakistan now, but also including India. Because in India, as I said, apart from Mamata Banerjee, there is no real steamroller, political steamroller that is heading against against the criminals of the Hindutva BJP and their colluders. And the people, hundreds of millions of Indians, have been hungry and starving for democracy and for justice and fairness for 75 years and longer, but just taking the kind of timeline from August 1947, 75 years. So Imran Khan is doing, on the whole, a positive service to the debate about democracy. But he has not been doing the complete service. So we shall be updating on this incomplete but significant service in due course as we come across the various stages of what is happening. In the reference to the 4 student leaders, I assert that I didn't know all of them, but I knew their kind of stated images. And these were fakers. These were manufactured characters. And they were being floated on the kind of, let's say, the bandwagon that ingratiated itself with the personality as cultivated in the images attached to Sheikh Mujib. Neither Sheikh Mujib nor these 4 leaders, so called, had the democratic accountability platform sorted. Now, that was the case in the late 1960s, and that has remained the case, despite the fact that East Pakistan, which is where they made their vaunted agitation in the late 60s, the East Pakistan became Bangladesh, the sovereign country. But Sheikh Hasina has become a kind of willing slave to the Hindutva regime of Narendra Modi, as she has colluded by silent non-participation in the rights of the people of the 7 states in the east of India. And she has betrayed the people of Assam. She has betrayed the people of the neighboring states who have been trampled over and deprived of the basic human rights and basic franchise and basic citizenship registration. The only other place that the Hindutva Brigade has done this to is the people of Kashmir, the occupied Kashmir. As I have said, and as the facts speak, the only person in all of India today that has said or does say anything critical, credibly critical, of the Hindutva Brigade is, of course, Mamata Banerjee. But Mamata Banerjee is remarkably kind of blanked by Sheikh Hasina. Sheikh Hasina is scared. Sheikh Hasina is scared shitless of being remotely seen as having any sympathy for Mamata Banerjee. Now, I'm not talking about East and West Bengal. I'm talking about universal democratic debate. Mamata Banerjee should not have to be or did not have to be left alone by Sheikh Hasina when Mamata Banerjee confronted the Hindutva Brigade, as the Hindutva Brigade swept away the basic birthrights of Muslims across India. Mamata Banerjee was the only one who spoke. Of course, she herself being a member of the Brahmin kind of background and political establishment, she was limited. And being an Indian, she is very limited on what she could say and what she could say by remaining credibly in power, in contention against the Hindutva brigade. As for the Indian newspaper, so called, although I don't see the Hindi language or other language titles, the English language ones that I do see are completely shameless in their stupidity and their supplication. One or two lines in kind of periodic dissent against the Hindutva regime is not good enough. There are nearly one and a quarter, well, more than 1.25 billion people in India. I mean, that's a lot of people. And yet there is no delivery to most of these people, economically, socially, in terms of access to democracy and fairness and human rights. Now, Imran Khan is doing something for Pakistan, the Pakistan that is now, that should have been happening in India about the Indian people. The Aam Admi outfit in Delhi turned out to be a hoax. It's Aam Admi, okay. And because it's called Aam Admi, it attracted the support of genuine people who were absolutely fed up and pissed off with the Congress and the Hindutva brigades. But Aam Admi has become a complete kind of disappointment. It's a fraud. But the potential is there across India for a movement to begin to hold the criminals of the Hindutva brigade to account, to dislodge them, and to fashion India according to the mandate given to the Congress by the majority of the voters that opted for the Congress in the 1947 events and negotiations. 75 years have passed, and hundreds of millions of Indians, quite apart from the Muslims that we have discussed, hundreds of millions of ordinary Hindus have been betrayed. And this is such a ready and open case which should be made against the Hindutva liars and criminals to dislodge them forever and then start mass prosecution of the Hindutva criminals, rapists, and mass murderers. Now, how will Imran Khan proceed? If there is an election, let's say in Pakistan, which is what the particular demand that Imran Khan is making currently in the latest set of his speeches. If there is an election, free and fair, that is a very difficult kind of condition. If there is an election, let's say, to what extent it will be free and fair remains to be seen. But if there is an election, it is, of course, cephalogically, statistically, quite possible to predict that the Tahrik candidates will sweep the board, if not get the monopoly of the seats. If they get a majority or if they get significant seats, then it is not clear as to what Imran Khan will really offer by way of constitutional reform or constitutional change. Of course, Pakistan ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah, is very clearly there as the banner. And he has referred to many of the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But how practical are these hadiths going to be in terms of the structure of bureaucracy that exists in Pakistan and in structure of the brainwashing that main media in Pakistan actually suffers from and the main politicals suffer from? And to what extent are the foreign interferers, especially the USA and the UK and their USA's other stooges, and India ever so kind of craftily has been feeding misinformation about Pakistan furiously throughout the last 4 months. And of course, in a different way before the 4 months began and before the actual ouster of Imran Khan's prime ministership and regime took place. India is very happy with the American role, but should India be doing that, or should India be, or the Indian main public opinion, should they not be actually supporting Imran Khan? That is the question. I am not going to give the answer because that question is very much up and overdue for answers by events. Going back to the events of the 1960s and especially September 1965 and the military intervention between then Pakistan and India. Many of the Indian generals have condemned the Indian military commander in front line and who actually accepted the ceasefire call. They have said that the evidence was there that India would have won uh, this 1965 war against Pakistan. Well, I've got news for them. The Indian generals are absolutely, those who condemned the general who accepted the ceasefire are absolute idiots. What would have happened if India had taken over a particular part of Pakistan? Would that be the end of it? The opposite. That would kind of inflame a bigger confrontation that would engulf what remained outside of the war zones in all of India. And the Indian public looking at the various sources and indications, Indian public are not as determined or as confident in their kind of expectation to destroy Pakistan. The Indian public, the public psychosis is very opposite. When it comes to Pakistan and the military confrontation with Pakistan, the Indian public is very, very different from the image of it that is portrayed, and for a good reason. Because whatever happens between the quote Hindus and Muslims is going to be bloody, and nobody can predict what the actual outcome would be at the end, if there is an end. So, ceasefire was the best course, and Lal Bahadur Shastri suffered mysterious heart attack shortly after the Tashkent kind of agreement that he was party to signing. Ceasefire is the way forward between India and Pakistan, not war. But there is not enough encouragement to de escalating the tension with Pakistan in the Indian media, Indian public opinion. And as for the main scripts written for the mainly South Indian films as part of the propaganda war against Pakistan, these scriptwriters are being irresponsible. Who are they serving? By inciting hatred against Pakistan, they're not helping the India because there will be equal amount of hatred against India. Is that what they want? Or do they think that there won't be? So the Indian scriptwriters, most of the South Indian scriptwriters are stupid, ignorant, irresponsible, and they're not being as patriotic as they think they are. As I've said before, this particular film featuring Puneet Rajkumar, who played against or opposite Radhika Pandit, had a scene in a cafe or in a restaurant where a fleeting appearance by a Muslim looking man with a cap was included. It lasted few seconds. And after this sequence, Radhika Pandit said in the script words to the effect that Puneet Rajkumar appeared to be familiar with Muslims or with Urdu or whatever. How dare Radhika Pandit? How dare the scriptwriter morons? Urdu is an Indian language, you morons. Urdu was created in what is Uttar Pradesh and that part of India. Urdu is an Indian language, you shits. And to say that somebody speaking Urdu was like somebody coming from outer space. Radhika Pandit, married to this overhyped actor husband, should be more enlightened than she appeared in that idiotic clip. But that is typical. Most of the Indian film industry main players, main actors, are brainwashed into thinking that they're agents of the kind of war state India, at war against Pakistan, or at war against Muslims. Most of them. How are they helping stabilize society? Well, of course, I'm not talking about the mass starvation and hunger that afflicts India every day, not in this particular discussion, but that is the reality. Who is responsible for hundreds of millions of Indians, mainly Dalits, mainly the so called scheduled caste, people having no basic human rights? Who is responsible for that? Will the Hindutva criminals answer the charge? Imran Khan, of course, is prosecuting in his jalsa all the criminals in Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif, his daughter, and his brother, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's son-in-law, the criminal, Zardari, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's grandson, Belawal the moron. Imran Khan is doing that. He is raising awareness to a level that has not existed in 75 years and has not existed during the 190 years from 1757 across the subcontinent. So Imran Khan is giving a lead, no doubt about that. but his lead should be supported by others, and not just others in Pakistan, but others from across the media in India. Shameless criminals still write and edit and control the contents of the Indian newspapers and magazines and Indian media. There is a film called Indian Soldier Never Goes to Sleep or Never Sleeps. It features the actor Vijay. I mean, this is a fantasy story, absolutely stupid. That kind of script should be replaced by recognizing the reality of Kashmir is a Muslim country. How dare the Brahmins claim it as their own? What would they do if somebody came to an Hindu majority area and claimed it to be their own? How would they react? They can make all kinds of noises and they can make all kinds of threats. But the reality is that whenever there was any military conflict between India and Pakistan, thousands and thousands and thousands of Indians lost their lives. No doubt about that. And the 1965 war, which I started by referring to this section, featured one East Pakistani Air Force man, Squadron Leader Alam. The Squadron Leader Alam achieved fame to the Pakistani patriots in 1965 by drowning and downing, not drowning necessarily, by destroying several Indian Air Force planes. Look up Squadron Leader Alam. So, in what is now Bangladesh, there are many other Squadron Leader Alams with the exact same determination to do what Alam did to the Indian Air Force. If Sheikh Hasina thinks that Bangladesh being controlled by her also means that there is an end to what happened in 1905 and since, then she is a complete and absolute moron. It's not the doings of the Jamaat Islami. The Jamaat Islami never ever belonged with the popular democratic movement anywhere. The Jamaat Islami was kind of personified by the late Maududi. Maududi was completely unrealistic and he had no connection with the people of Pakistan, East Pakistan or West Pakistan. In fact, they didn't want Pakistan, the Jamaat Islami, of course. But the Pakistan Jamaat Islami now, in the shadow of Imran Khan, is pretending to be a radical agitation in Karachi at least. How dare they pretend that they are a radical movement? They are not. The Jamaat Islami is a complicit bureaucracy. It's a complicit bureaucracy that sucks up to the powers and does that with the contemptible, cynical confidence that it can manipulate everyone. When Matur Rahman Nizami was hanged, I mean, did people actually know who Matur Rahman Nizami was? I mean, he was supposed to be, or supposed to have been a Maulana, etc., etc., and he had never, ever claimed to be a sheikh. And yet, in order to appease Sheikh Hasina, Nizami adopted his name as a sheikh or something. I mean, these people are supposed to be pure Islamist thinkers and activists. How could he do that? And so, what Nizami did with his name, etc., is what the others in the Jamaat Islami did. And the Jamaat Islami legal kind of front was a complete fraud. Throughout the whole period of the so called war crime trial, so called, the Jamaat Islami was misled, misrepresented by a liar who pretended to be a lawyer. He was as guilty as the people he was supposed to be representing. If they were guilty, then he was guilty as well. Guilty of lying, complicit with the liars of the Awami League. Nobody had the courage to cite the evidence of the Awami League's lies. Lies to the people, lies against the people, lies against the evidence, lies against the history on which Bangladesh stands. There has never been 1,000 years of Bengali nationhood, you morons. The only time when what is now Bangladesh, parts of it, came politically alive was when the Muslims arrived. And all the beautiful mosques in Dhaka alone bear testimony to that. There was no Bengali national identity in what is now Bangladesh. Look at Chittagong, it's not Bengali. Look at Silot, of course it's not Bengali. And so on. So what you have to do is to recognize right across the subcontinent the existence of multi-faith, multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic federations. And that is the least that should be done based on universal values. The founding principles of the United Nations Organization neatly contain most of the wonderful values that must be pursued right across the world, including in the subcontinent. Human rights, equal access to justice, etc., etc. And the scripts, as I have talked about the scripts in the South Indian films, are part and parcel of the denial of the founding principles of the United Nations. The Pakistani scripts have a long way to go, and the Bangladeshi scripts as well. Bangladeshi scripts are most of them are so ridiculously inept. They're brazenly imitating Indian scripts, Indian films. It's a disgrace. The actual achievements of Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani warrant not one, several fictions and documentaries, as do the achievements of Sher-e Bangla Fazlul Haq. Fazlul Haq was a giant physically as well as intellectually and morally. Why should Bangladeshis look at South India, not even Tipu Sultan, for heaven's sake, others who would be against Tipu Sultan? But Tipu Sultan was the only hero from the south of India against the British. Tipu Sultan contributed, as I said, and played a role bigger than anybody else in the whole of the south of India. He was highly intelligent and introduced world class administration reforms as well as beating the British many times. The British never want to admit that. The British imperialists, that is. So when the ethnicity linked morons in Tower Hamlets kind of publish or post personal sadness at the passing of the Queen, are they alive or are they dead? Who do they think they are kidding? They never had any personal links with the passed away Brenda, the monarch. They never would have. Most of the so called fronters in the ethnicity linked kind of domains, doing business, corrupt business at the expense of the Bangladeshis, expense of the Silotis, most of the crooks are illegal immigrants. Now, that is a stigma word, stigmatic phrase. I don't say it delightedly. I say it to bring home to the morons that if it wasn't for me and the campaigns that I fight and I've been fighting, these illegal migrants, illegal immigrants would have been nowhere. But they don't recognize that. They've got themselves settled as little cabals here, there, and everywhere. And they don't recognize me, and they don't recognize the battles that people fought along with me long before these morons arrived in this country as illegal migrants. And they began the operation of hijacking our work. It's not the same. The hijackers are crooks and criminals, chores. They are not the original, and they didn't have the values and the aims and the purposes that we fight for and we have been fighting for. They never heard of the Sunday Times article of the 2nd of December 1973. They never ever heard of Chief Inspector Wallace, John Wallace of the Lehman Street Police Station of 1976. These criminals invent the history of Brick Lane battle. They have no idea. There was no Brick Lane battle, you morons. The Brick Lane battle was given post facto, long post facto, kind of title by criminals who wanted to kind of harvest the benefits of the image of the community in defending itself. The community never defended itself. All the criminals listed as defender leaders were complicit colluders with the racists. I'm the one who defends the community, and I'm the one who is defending the community. At a meeting held in 1978, not long after Altaf Ali was murdered by the racists, Peter Slope, Peter Shore, the swine, Peter Shore was being feted by the slaves, mental slaves, that included the late Tayyub Rahman. And Peter Shore was told by the slaves that he should not allow Mr. Haque to remain at the meeting. What would I have done? Answer is that I would have brought them to life from their death. They were dead, they were dying there with complicity after complicity that Peter Shore was weeping for them. And none of the slaves present there said a word when Shore said, I don't think it's appropriate for Mr. Haque to stay at the meeting. Did I depend on that? Did I ever depend on staying at a meeting of morons and liars and crooks? I create movements, and I did that movement about Al-Tabali and the racist murder. If the criminals being portrayed long after the events as having leaders, as Kalam Chowdhury has idiotically posted in his Facebook column, based on his citing of alleged photographs by a thing called Paul Trevor. Now, Paul Trevor is a racist. Paul Trevor is an ignorant racist, jealous racist, ignorant moron. Paul Trevor did not understand what was going on then, and he still doesn't understand what went on then. But Paul Trevor is making money. Pathetic. Paul Trevor is making money allegedly as a photographer of the 1970s, just like the criminal racist Pill Maxwell. Pill Maxwell is the name. Pill is the pronunciation of Maxwell that the late Abdul Salik would say it like. Pill. Abdul Salik was illiterate in that sense and he could not say Phil. Most of the names he could not say, like Dan Jones, he said Dan Jones. So Pill Maxwell, Paul Trevor, these are parasites that took pictures of the aspects of the community from their racist, hostile distance. They did not identify the community and they never photographed the actual events. And Kalam Chowdhury or Abu Tahir Shinkafani was not even in this country for a very long time since then. He arrived in the early 1980s, or he appeared in the 1980s. And he took a long time before becoming, quote, legal. There was no position that Abu Tahir could hold or occupy in actively defending the community against racists in context. So for Abu Tahir to keep posting idiotic rubbish about figures in the community is irresponsible, ignorant, misleading, and dishonest. He should stop doing this. Because Abu Tahir is jealous of what I do and how I do it, that doesn't mean that he should distort what I do. He should recognize what I do. As a self-proclaimed descendant of an alim, Islamic scholar, Abu Tahir has a duty not to tell lies. Abu Tahir has not justified hundreds of lies that he has published or he has taken part in. Well, that piece in the Bangla Post, which contained a big picture of me, but contained no reference to me being present, is a typical example of Abu Tahir's falsification. Where in the Prophet's life did such falsification get approval? Abu Tahir must answer this, as must he answer the lies that he uttered about Lutfur Rahman speaking very highly of me. Did I ask for Lutfur Rahman to speak very highly of me in the context of the lies that Lutfur Rahman had been uttering and perpetrating against me, my work, and the community, and the defense of the community? When the ruling by Richard Morey was published on the 23rd of April 2015, there was no sign. There was no sign of Abu Tahir there, not among the public. Why wasn't he there? And none of the others, many of whom later became so-called councillors associated with Lutfur Rahman's cabal, none of those were there either. When I asked one of Lutfur Rahman's main associates, as he was rushing away from the area of the court in the Strand and probably walking to the underground station, Temple Station, he was the younger brother of a man called, what's his name? He was a former councillor. He said that he was not going to speak at that time. It was too tense, etc., etc. He has not spoken in the 7 years since then. And he's not among the newly elected batch of councillors either. He is one of the ones that made several promises to me that he would discuss with Lutfur Rahman very urgently my concerns about lies and lying, and will come back. He never came back. Abu Tahir promised to me dozens of times that he would come back. He never did come back with the substance. Abu Tahir promised to sit down with me to hear the facts of the lies that Lutfur Rahman was perpetrating, and he never did sit down, as did the infant Muhammad Jubair. Muhammad Jubair is an infant because intellectually he is too immature to be called the senior journalist at the Channel Slaves, especially as Muhammad Jubair showed his stupidity on 2 occasions. Here are the 2 occasions that I refer to. One happened in the Altabali Park, where the infant was getting a so-called interview recorded with Syed Farooq. Syed Farooq is the younger brother of Syed Nurul, but Syed Farooq came as a dubious kind of entrant into the UK. And Syed Farooq came as a nominee of the Awami League Sikh Hasina brigade. So when I saw the infant recording that interview with Sayyid Farooq, I interrupted Sayyid Farooq and I wanted him to tell me about his latest relevant promise about certain events. And the infant Jubair interrupted me and told me as if he knew what he was talking about and I didn't know. He said, "Do you know who he is?" I said, "Who is he?" He said, "He is the representative of the Awami League in this country or something like that." Now, why should I even hear that? I am not talking about the Awami League. And the Awami League, no matter who they are, have no status in this country, you moron. I said that on the channel Slaves Reality with Mahi program, you shit. I said that the Awami League was the corrupt party, the most corrupt party in Bangladesh, or worse to that effect. You check that. Syed Farooq owed me a series of explanations about the conduct of his brother. And the conduct of his brother Syed Nurul had to do with the then Tower Hamlets Law Center based in Commercial Road. I began an investigation into the behavior of Syed Nurul as a member of the so-called management committee of the then Law Center. After I was confidentially made aware that people in the community who approached the Law Center strictly in good faith about the Law Center promised that it would help them, had, unknown to them, their personal files being checked and inspected by Syed Nurul himself as a member of the management committee. Now that was happening in the 1980s. That was happening in the 1980s, and that was, even then, it was criminal. Syed Nurul had no right to look at other people's files, nor had the Law Society, Law Center, any right to give access to him. To cut a long story short, I took the action against Syed Nurul. I prosecuted him, and the hearing was staged at the Thames Magistrate Court. But so many lies had been told by the Tower Hamlets Law Center staff that the magistrate repeated their lies against me and didn't want to hear my case against Syed Nurul. That's how it ended. But I have not forgotten, nor have I given up on this behavior of that criminal lawyer, that idiot magistrate, the shit. But despite the fact that Syed Nurul escaped conviction, because there was no hearing really, Syed Nurul got exposed, thoroughly exposed, as having been most corrupt, irresponsible, and so on. And he was ousted from the Law Center's management committee, and the Law Center itself disintegrated as a result. So I didn't secure a conviction, but I secured far bigger consequence than I had intended to secure. I wanted accountability. So this is the kind of thing that I do. This is the kind of thing that I do. So it was part of that. Syed Nurul's brother, Syed Farooq, came to me requesting me to forgive his brother. And that is what I was asking him about in the Altavali Park when the stupid Muhammad Jubair interrupted me, telling me who he was. This stupid boy didn't know that I knew Sheikh Mujib. And I knew Sheikh Mujib in a way that nobody else knew and would never know. And that I did not have any need to know any of the corrupt politicals, either in East Pakistan or later. How dare this boy tell me about Sayyid Farooq being a representative of the Awami League? Now, what happened later is an update is that Sayyid Farooq was then the subject of the so-called London Bangla Press Club criticism. I shall not go into the details of that except to say that that was inevitable. And London Bangla Press Club is a fraud. I shall come to that fraud for a detailed examination in due course, not necessarily in this edition. Another piece that this infant Muhammad Jubair did was featuring the Dilchad restaurant. Now, Dilchad restaurant allegedly played a historic part in helping Sheikh Mujib during the period in East Pakistan. Now, let me put it on the record. None of the people that belong to the family ever had the political, let alone the intellectual, let alone the moral ability to play any part whatsoever. What they were doing was hosting Sheikh Mujib very briefly when he visited the UK. Just like another man called Moskond Mia. Moskond had a restaurant in the Whitechapel Road called Shangri-La Restaurant. And Moskond, whenever Sheikh Mujib was in the UK and staying in a hotel, Moskond would ferry food, parcels of food, cooked in his Shangri-La restaurant so as to suck up to Sheikh Mujib. Now, what these people showed, and there were others from the Siloti community. Now, this is a Siloti language community, not a Bengali language community. These people went out of their way to help a Bengali politician in the hope that they would get noticed. Now, that is their psychological inadequacy. That does not make them political thinkers or planners or leaders of any kind whatsoever. There were other people in my family, wider family, that did the same thing. I mean, they knew Sheikh Mujib when he was in the UK, but we never needed to make any claim about knowing Sheikh Mujib. Shangri-La's Moskond himself is a relation, really, but we don't need to make a mention. We've had people in our family with wider achievements in the history. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever. But the infant Jubair said that that Dilchand restaurant played a part. What part? What part? Apart from cooking meals and letting Sheikh Mujib eat the meals. What part? I'm calling this boy infant Jubair because he insulted me and he has not apologized and he has lied to me and lied for Lutfur Rahman. This boy was present in the basement of a restaurant in New Road where Lutfur Rahman met me after requesting Alibor Chowdhury to request me to meet him there on the about 9 o'clock on an evening of 20th of September 2012. I have to pay the money for the cost of that meal that Lutfur Rahman kind of bought for me despite my protests. Because my principle is that I don't eat any meal bought or paid for by anyone else. Now, that meeting of the 20th of September 2012 began. We all spoke Siloti, so it began by Lutfur Rahman saying words to the effect that, and he's addressing me, that you, Muhammad Haque, should have become the first MP here. You should have become the mayor here, not me. And words to that effect. The purpose of the meeting was not for an appreciation by Lutfur Rahman of Muhammad Haque's abilities or credentials. The purpose of the meeting was Lutfur Rahman's lying as the incumbent post holder in the post of mayor, while severe damage was being done to the community by the criminals in the Tower Hamlets Council continuing to rob and steal intellectual materials, and especially the role of a criminal called Colin Cormack. The criminal Colin Cormack, to use the contemporary language of Imran Khan, was a chur, employed in a chur fronted Tower Hamlets Council. Thief. Now, Colin Cormack was a lying thief. Colin Cormack had been lying since since the then kind of chief executive in the Tower Hamlets Council, Sylvie Pierce, appointed him to look at the issue of housing. That was in the middle of the 1990s. So starting in April 1996, so we count the years, April 1996 to what we're talking about, that was 12 years and 4 years of 16 years. It has been going on, it had been going on for 16 years. And the infant, Jubair, was nowhere near the United Kingdom when it began. So on the occasion of the 20th of September, which is now 21st of September today, exactly anniversary, 20th of September 2012, Lutfur began by saying to Muhammad Haque that you should have been the first MP, the first mayor, and etc., etc. And my response in brief was, that is nothing to do with it. I have been asking you to sort out this criminal, Colin Cormack, who is employed by the council. And you can do it by giving him an order as an executive mayor. Now that's the crux of it. Lutfur Rahman lied, repeatedly lied, and refused or failed to give the order to Colin Cormack. Now remember the date, that was happening on the 20th of September 2012 in the basement of a restaurant in in New Road. And where is the restaurant? Just to give a location, The restaurant is not far from the East London Mosque, the back of the East London Mosque in the Whitechapel Road. And the restaurant was not far from it was opposite the Dental Institute of the Royal London Hospital. In fact, it was opposite the current London Hospital kind of building now in Whitechapel. And present there was Lutfur and this infant Jubair and the infant Alibor Chowdhury. Alibor Chowdhury was an infant. By his behavior, he might be 1 or 2 years apart, I mean, in terms of age, chronological age, from Jubair. But these two were very closely visible with Lutfur Rahman throughout his years as the incumbent in the post of the corrupt post of the mayor. I said to Lutfur Rahman that I've advised you constitutionally, as the executive mayor, you can give him an executive order to do certain things, and that would be the end of the problem. So Lutfur Rahman did not say he would not do it. Remember what Lutfur Rahman did? He never said he would not do it. Every time he had direct, face to face, person to person conversation with me about the role of the council and his role, Lutfur Rahman always said he would do what I was asking him to do. I'll remember when he said he wouldn't do it. The only time he said he wouldn't do it was when Rabina Khan, very close to Lutfur Rahman, made a stupid intervention and requested Lutfur to help me. Now, none of these morons, intellectually, or in terms of knowledge, or in terms of morality, or in terms of evidence, ever had any ground to give me help. These morons created problems by their servitude, their slavery, their idiocy, their ignorance. And all they had to do is to remove the servitude and their criminality and their collusion. They could never in their whole lives help me because they created the hindrance against my work for the community that they would never be able to imagine. So what happens? Lutfur gets ousted by Richard Morey. Remember, we are kind of leapfrogging from 2012 to 2015, 3 years later. And then I bump into the infant, Alibor Chowdhury in Brick Lane. And the conversation lasts not more than a few minutes. And Alibor Chowdhury spits out this confession that I knew was there all the time. He said Colin Cormack never wanted to help me. And throughout the years, Alibor lied and told me that Colin Cormack was trying to help me, despite the knowledge that Colin Cormack was not trying to help me, that Colin Cormack was trying to hinder me, as I was saying all along. And Alibor Chowdhury kept saying that Lutfur had said he was doing his best to help me. How on earth could these morons help me when they were hindering me? Now, the essential lesson from all of this for the community, for democracy, for society, is this, that morons like the Navara media and the thing in America and the SWP, the socialist wonkers, and even the BBC's David Grossman, these morons have completely fucked up the facts. And none of them has actually got the facts right, anywhere near right, about Luther Roman. And of course, the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets has big time fucked up the whole thing. So the community in Tower Hamlets is very badly, well, served is the wrong word. So it's being badly treated by the composition of corrupt, ignorant, immoral morons parading as the Labour Party, morons parading as the councillors. Now, Rushnara Ali, I shall deal with her in due course with all the facts. This is a liability, this is an embarrassment, this is a mental slave that mental slaves from certain parts of Silot are keeping in post. And if the liar Keir Starmer gets in government, it is conceivable, it is not looking as if there is an immediate future opportunity, but if he does get in, then Rushnar Ali will get a routine place. Rushnar Ali has had routine places. She got nominated by the Young Foundation. That's a racist outfit. And racists love her because she is a racist slave. She's dishonest, she's corrupt, and she nearly gave up. She nearly didn't stand again the last effective election after the particular experience. So, if the community actually was politicized and politically organized about the political demands and needs of the community in the context of the duties of a member of parliament, Rushnara Ali would be thrown out. What does it say about her? She grins as he poses for the camera, standing along with the crook, Fola Monzila Uddin. And the two of them grinning along with the crook chair of the channel slaves. Now that crook will be chair for another 2 years, I think, because Mahi Firdaus Jalil has been disqualified for the period up to 2023 or 2024, I think, from becoming a director. So another few years. And Samad, Ahammak Samad would be no longer involved with the channel slaves. In any case, Ahammak Samad and Paula Monzila Uddin and Rushnar Ali grinning in a picture. Now, what can be more pathetic than that? How can Rushnar Ali agree to be anywhere near Paula Monzila Uddin, let alone grinning and being near Paula Monzila Uddin? What do the Guardian have to say about Rushnar Ali's judgment? What do the others in the so called enlightened British left have to say about Rushnar Ali's corruption? How can she stand anywhere near Paula Monzilauddin and the channel slaves give her the kind of platform every time? And she appears, Paula Monzilauddin, appears as the elder stateswoman. What the fuck? Paula Monzilauddin is elder nothing. She is a crook. She is a disgrace to the name of the Bangladeshis. And those morons who actually engineered Paula Monzilauddin getting a gong are to be prosecuted, should be prosecuted for bringing the community in disrepute. So, how many crooks do we prosecute? I mean, there is no end to the list, is there? All the gong grabbing or gong sort of begging mental slaves. I mean, there is a long list of these criminals. Anything, and they would pick it. Anything that says honor or something, and they would pick it. As that man in the then Pakistan Foreign Service, working in Lebanon he was a PFS man who wrote to his friend who was a neighbor to me in the university hall in Dhaka in the 1960s. His friend, my neighbor, had wanted to know because this guy had just been posted as having passed Pakistan's Foreign Service entrance after attempting the CSS exam, Central Superior Service exam. This individual wanted to know how Lebanon was, how he found Lebanon. And this guy wrote back saying that the Lebanese Muslims would sell their mother as a prostitute if there is the right price. So I echo that man, in paraphrase, of course. And so the most of the criminals posing as leaders of the Siloti speaking Bangladeshi community would do the same in return for a gong or in return for an approval from their racist masters. When General Daya gave the order for the massacre of the people in Amritsar, who were the people doing the shooting? Those who shot the innocent protesters were Sikhs, Punjabis, and Gurkhas or whatever. Most of them are not white. When this boy at the Langdon Park School was murdered by his fellow Bangladeshi boys, Ajmal Ahmad, I think. I went to Tower Hamlets Council and I wanted to get the answer from the individual who was in post as the community safety person, as a councillor, Ohid Ahmad. And Ohid Ahmad was disrespectful to me on that occasion. He didn't stand up to greet me. And when we had the meeting, he was in such a rush to end the meeting. So I never really could get the answers to the questions as to what was he doing, ensuring that Bangladeshi children were not murdering other Bangladeshi children. Ohid Ahmed was not prepared to discuss that. I'm putting this on the record and asking Ohid Ahmed to deny what I'm saying and to deny it in terms, item by item, and to substantiate any denial by publicly stating what he actually did in communicating anything to the Metropolitan Police, communicating anything to the rest of the council, and I'm asking him to provide contemporaneous copy or copies of those things that he may claim he did circulate or issue. My view is that Ohid Ahmed did not do any such thing. My view is that the various reports about Ohid Ahmed abusing his position and getting the Tower Hamlets Council's dust persons to pay particular attention to his house in Auburn Street, London E14, is correct, as that Ohid Ahmed has not denied any of the allegations. And if he did not deny any of the allegations, the question is why didn't he deny the allegations? Because the allegations concerned Ohid Ahmed abusing his position in the council. Because the context was that while he was getting the excessive service of the estate cleaning personnel to get his part of the estate cleaned, ordinary members of the community, ordinary neighborhoods were being denied ordinary service. Now, that is a serious allegation. And it is extrapolatable to apply to the case of Ajmal Ahmad. Because violence by Bangladeshi youngsters, mainly male but not confined to male, violence against by Bangladeshi youths mainly against other Bangladeshi youths in Tower Hamlets is rampant. Gangsterism among Bangladeshi youngsters in Tower Hamlets is rampant. And there is a clear policy of silence about that on the part of the council, on the part of the ordinary councillors, and on the part of the incumbent in the corrupt post of the mayor. Ohid Ahmed was among the number of people who got Afsana Begum, then an employee in the council, to write untruthful emails to me in response to my demands for answers concerned. Ohid Ahmed wrote words to the effect that I should not involve him in the issues that I was writing to him about. He said, leave me alone or leave me out of it. Words to that effect. Effectively, that is what he said, what he meant. I'm putting this on the record and asking Ohid Ahmed, how dare you? How dare you I am giving notice to Ohid Ahmed that he will be receiving detailed legal demands in writing from me and on behalf of my organizations affected. That being a counselor, whether it's on behalf of this party or that party, being a counselor in Tower Hamlets is not his bafaiti সম্পত্তি. Ohid Ahmed's bafaiti সম্পত্তি does not extend to becoming a counselor or being a counselor or seeking to be a counselor in Tower Hamlets. Ohid Ahmeder bafaiti সম্পত্তি নয়. It is my right to say what I've just said and what I've been saying. And I'm saying that Ohid Ahmed misled me when he, quote, suggested to me to speak to one of the most notorious liars employed in the council at the time, 2013, I think. I'll get her name out before this edition is out and I shall read out her name. Ohid Ahmed had ambitions and he claims to be even suitable to become an MP for the Labour Party. The Labour Party, being unfit for political judgments, selected Ohid Ahmed for a seat in somewhere in either Norwich or someplace. Now, Ohid Ahmed didn't stand a chance of getting elected from a constituency in Norwich or someplace. Quite apart from the fact that it doesn't have the demographic composition which is central to the likes of Ohid Ahmed getting any chance to get elected post. That is available only in Tower Hamlets. In that way, does Ohid Ahmed know how Tower Hamlets remained less fragmented demographically than it could have been? Does he know that? He is ungrateful, disrespectful, and dishonest. And this assertion about Ohid Ahmed being ungrateful, disrespectful, and dishonest will only escalate if he commits the stupidity of challenging the accuracy of what I'm saying. Ohid Ahmed had ambition to become that was a joke attempt. He wanted to become the mayor of Tower Hamlets in 2018. And who endorsed Ohid Ahmed? It was none other than Lutfur Rahman. And what did Ohid Ahmed's endorsement by Lutfur Rahman say about Ohid Ahmed? Nothing. Neither Lutfur Rahman nor Ohid Ahmed is fit for elected post in Tower Hamlets or anywhere else. What is this woman's name? I'm going to get the name of this woman, this criminal in Tower Hamlets. All right. So the reference reference to Wahid Ahmad's recommendation actually is based on the question that I put to the formal sitting of the cabinet dated the 3rd of July 2013. And the question had 222 words. And it's a one sentence question. Notice this, be careful. It's quite a long question. Will the items as listed under strategic priority in the document marked homelessness statement 2013 to 2017 be actually implemented by Town Council? And if so, over what actual time period and with the accompaniment of what objectively verifiable independent audit that meets the requirements of all the anti-discriminatory legislation currently in place in the UK and in accordance with all the actual agreements, covenants, and accords that have been entered into by the Town Council, which has gone on the records as stating and or as claiming that it does in fact abide by those requirements and that it does in fact have personnel in place and measures ongoing as part of the council's mainstream activities as opposed to stopgap tokenistic events to ensure that those claims and statements are implemented, adhered to, and that they are manifestly, demonstrably, verifiably so, and that independently credible evidence is already available in the behavior of the council over the past relevant years to satisfy any constitutional, democratic, and evidential question that may arise as to the authenticity and the veracity of the claims that have been made and are often made in the name of the council as an entity to the effect that the council has actual systems and measures in place to hold the relevant decision makers to account. Now, that is 222 words in one sentence that I wrote. Now, that is the one that I wrote and circulated in advance for the so called cabinet that took place on Wednesday, the 3rd of July 2013. What happened at the beginning of that sitting was the Lutfur Rahman then invited me to read the thing with a comment words to the effect that it was very difficult to understand the sentence or something like that. Of course, it was difficult to understand if he was intellectually limited. But I had actually put in about 10 parts of 10 constitutional evidential aspects into one sentence. And any intelligent reader would have been able to understand that. Anyway, he invited me to read this, and I read that. And as I read that, he said that it is words to the effect that is better understood when read like that instead of in written form. Now, the main question was about Rabina Khan because she was supposedly the cabinet minister in Lutfur's corrupt cabinet at the expense of housing. And the crook that was involved in the decision making, the crook that I actually meant by decision makers, is of course Colin Cormack, who was sitting there. And as soon as Rabina Khan gave her token answer, Colin Cormack stormed out of the event or walked very fast out of the sitting. Another woman, another employee in that meeting that actually was present, is the one that after that meeting or after that meeting, I spoke to Ohid Ahmed. I wanted him to explain to me why this series of lies was being perpetrated. And he suggested that I should speak to this particular employee. I'm going to look for her name. This is very important. Ohid Ahmed must not assume this is going away. This is only the beginning. Now, this woman's name is, or was on that day, Jackie O'Donoghue. Now, this is one of the most dishonest, corrupt employees of the Armed Council. Now, that means that this council is fully, overly dominated by crooks and liars. Jackie O'Donoghue was the one that Ohid Ahmed asked me or suggested to me I should speak to. Now, that shows his stupidity. Ohid Ahmed obviously didn't know who I was. He knew that I came from the same kind of geographical area, differentiated by several decades, but that's all he knew. He didn't know the range of my experience, the range of my understanding, and the scope of my intellect. Jackie O'Donoghue was not somebody that I needed anyone to recommend me to speak to, because she was part of the crooks that had been causing the problem. That is why I kept asking Lutfur Rahman to do his job, and Lutfur Rahman lied. Lied and he lied. And Ohid Ahmed, initially he suggested I should speak to Jackie O'Donoghue. And when I followed up, he then said to me, in an email he sent, or two emails. One was stronger than the other, and the stronger one said, "Leave me out of it." I'm saying to Lutfur Ohid Ahmad that I am beginning to answer your absolute idiocy and insult. How dare you say to me, "Leave you out of it"? তোমার বাফাইতি সম্পত্তি নয় কাউন্সিল, Ohid Ahmad. And I'm going to deal with you. Apologize to me and deal with the damages that you and Lutfur lied and caused. How dare you? Taramless Council has the record of being one of the worst local councils in terms of accountability, in terms of providing housing. And Lutfur Rahman is guilty of crimes against the duties owed to the community. And Ohid Ahmad is as guilty as Lutfur Ahmad for colluding with him. We shall come back to all of that in due course. And as I said, Ohid Ahmad is on notice. Ohid Ahmad is on notice, as are a number of Lutfur Rahman's cabal, others. So this is the reply to one of the emails that I got from one of the employees in the so-called democratic services. I must say that there are a handful, but not more than a handful of employees in the council who appear to be less offensive and less stupid than Jackie O'Donoghue or Ohid Ahmad. Dear Mr. Haque, I'm not going to read out the name of this individual employee, but she was a senior committee officer. Dear Mr. Haque, I write to confirm that the action arising from last night's cabinet meeting is that Miss Jackie O'Donoghue, Service Head Strategy, Regeneration and Sustainability, will speak to you regarding the public question, and if were any issues you left had not been addressed, this would be an opportunity to discuss these. Then you will receive a formal response in writing. I'll pass your contact details to Miss O'Donoghue, and her office will make contact with you. Now, O'Donoghue is odiously dishonest. This odiously dishonest O'Donoghue never did that, make any contact, and never told the truth, and never communicated the truth, is not capable of communicating the truth. The issue is that although Eric the Pickles appointed a group of criminals as commissioners for Tower Hamlets Council, those criminals only made things worse. The main criminal was the crook, the fire brigade's union person, made a Knight, Ken Knight, and another criminal. They became devoted to the pursuit of the name of Rachel Saunders. For no reason did they keep praising her. Sat next to Rachel Saunders was this Peter Golds. Between the two of them, They were lying, as were the commissioner crooks. And who gave me the responsibility to look at the crooks and the criminals' evidence? My conscience. There was nobody watching the criminals. Now, Tolerance Council is absolutely stuffed full of liars. And Eric the Pickles is a liar himself, so there is no chance that a liar will get rid of liars. And his successors, so called, that is, those who serially got into the post effectively occupied by Eric the Pickles, were as unfit. What has happened in the so called debacle about the debacle, they effectively it is treated as a debacle by the so-called left, including David Grossman on the Newsnight program on the 19th of May 2022, after the 5th of May 2022 so-called election, council election, in which the so-called Aspire party staged a return, if you like, with Luther becoming declared as elected mayor. I say declared. I don't say he was elected. I say he was declared. Now, at every level of the council, there are crooks and getting paid under the various descriptions, like Jackie the odious O'Donoghue is described as head of this, that, and the other. Who is holding these liars to account? Not the councillors. And there exists no forum, constitutionally legitimate or legitimized forum, out in the community. And if you take any of these criminals' crimes to the courts take inevitably, predictably, the courts take the side of the criminals, liars in the courts. As a deputy district judge liar called Silverman did in August 2015, when I appeared on behalf of a group of tenants in dispute with the Towners Council. Jackie, the odious O'Donoghue, was not there. They were represented by whoever they were represented by, and some of the other tenants were represented by a criminal racist called Edward Fitzpatrick. Criminal Edward Fitzpatrick is based at the Garden Court chambers in the Lincoln's Inns. Now, I have long-standing claims against this criminal, so I'm not going to raise those and confuse the particular narrative here. I represented a group that was involved as a cooperative housing group, and Jackie O'Donoghue had literally sent dozens of lies against that group. And Silverman showed that any claim, well, Imran Khan is completely wrong in praising the rule of law in Britain. Because Imran Khan has been talking about rule of law and has been praising the rule of law as he claims to know exists in Britain. Now, Silverman's behavior was typical deputy district judge or district judge behavior. Most district judges are liars. Most magistrates are liars. What do? They take the side of the state, or take the side of the mini state. Now, the local state is, of course, the local council. And against all the evidence that the cooperative called Tush Housing Cooperative, all the evidence, the accurate evidence over the years of battle against the council's liars that existed and was produced, was ignored by this criminal who invented an excuse and invented a series of praising words in praise of Tower Hamlets Council. Now, this is part of the beginning of the diagnosis of that event. My representing people in the county court. Now, I'm not a licensed law trader, but I represented them because of my knowledge of the law and my long standing rights and evidence and abilities. Most of the times, I represent people by not going to courts as such. Most of the stuff is done by correspondence, and they're so effective. They have been effective for 50 years plus. So I've solved problems that cannot be solved, even by Michael Mansfield. I've solved difficult problems for people, and I've helped keep people alive. Otherwise, they would have been finished because of my abilities as a unique constitutional law and legal rights and law rights advocate. And so when I looked at Silberman's idiocies, I knew that he was lying, and he was praising Jackie Ardonoy and others. So I shall be covering Silberman's lies and lying, and I shall be talking about the lies and incompetence and the stupidity and the legal ignorance on the part of Edward Fitzpatrick. Now, that was August 2015. In 2012, I had told off Edward Fitzpatrick. Again, I shall cover those in detail in the later parts. Essentially, it proves once again that what David Neuberger, the first president of the so-called Supreme Court, said about the quote accessibility of the London court system following Brexit. I mean, he was actually meaning a continuation of the mythology about the English legal system and the court system. What he said and what he meant and what he was kind of repeating was a pack of lies, mythologized. Because most ordinary people, as the members of the Tush Housing Co-op in London E3 found out, most ordinary people are denied access to the truth in the courts. I shall be covering the whole event of the Tush Housing Cooperative in due course, as I said, because this particular group had a short kind of backing by this petitioner, Andy Arlam, because these people had collected signatures to a petition against the behavior of Tower Hamlets Council. The petition they presented in the July sitting, I think, of the so-called council, attended by the liar, the midget, John Biggs. And Andy Arlam In effect, he didn't necessarily name J.K. Adonai, but he effectively mentioned the group of thugs that must have included J.K. Adonai. And they served a notice requiring the tenants to vacate the place. What I can say again by way of update, contextual update, is that the losses to the community, losses to individuals being entitled to housing but being denied housing by Town Council amount to billions of pounds because it's thousands of people who are being denied and deprived due and proper housing. And I've been doing very deep, extensive research, investigation, legally, evidentially, factually, empirically about this. And the same applies to the next door council, Newham, and as it does to next door council, Hackney, as it does to other London councils. And what I'm saying about Eric Pickles is that he's not alone. All the members of parliament, all the previous incumbents in posts in the housing department have turned out to be absolutely ignorant idiots. So the question may arise, how on earth did this happen? How on earth this come to this position? Exactly. So it's not like the Conservative Party is interested in solving housing problems. The Conservative Party, by definition, is a party of destroyers. They destroy the natural resources, they destroy the rights of people, and they reap the harvest, they exploit the harvest. And the Labour Party is too timid, too ignorant, and the Lib Dems completely non existent. And the Greens, the Greens are, I think, best engaged in decorating themselves in green colors. Why else is Newham, the London Borough of Newham, a one party state? No sign of the other parties at all. And the corruption by Roxana Fias, the corruption by other her colleagues concerned, is not a secret. They are open crooks, openly breaking the law and openly lying. So we shall be updating on all of those in the context of the beginning of era, the beginning of the era of Brian as King Charles III. How is the Uncle Tom quasi quatrang as the Chancellor? This is a depraved regime. How depraved as compared with the depravity personified Boris Johnson is yet to be spectacled, witnessed. So we shall be continuing with all these issues and others. For the time being, this is now 2 hours 21 minutes long. So we come to an end to this particular broadcast.